The Securities Investors Association, Singapore or SIAS, says it will continue to engage both Hyflux and investors as the water treatment firm continues to firm up a restructuring plan with a potential white knight. The troubled firm applied for another 2-month extension in its debt moratorium last week. Gerald has this report.
SIAS says it will continue to ensure Hyflux communicate and explain the terms of settlements clearly. This will enable investors to make an informed decision whether or not to accept the eventual rescue deal. United Arab Emirates utility firm Utico has made an offer for an 88% stake in Hyflux, but the Hyflux board has yet to approve.
We are holding meetings with steering committees that represent various investor groups and keeping them informed on developments in Hyflux. There isn't a deal that has been signed, sealed and delivered, so I think investors need to be patient. As soon as the company confirms, there are not only Utico, there are other investors as well on the table.
Mr. David Gerald was speaking on the sidelines of a corporate governance conference where he urged all companies to maintain trust with stakeholders. Mr. Gerald also said as 2019 comes to a close, companies must communicate their position clearly and not shy away, especially if they are experiencing bad times. Instead, they should engage stakeholders even more. Education Minister Ong Ye Kung, who sits on the board of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, added that rules related to corporate governance need to be risk-focused and relevant.
The rules need to cater to the rapid advancement of technology that is disrupting industry and market activity. Hence, rules need to be more technologically neutral. One example is the Securities and Futures Act, which regulates securities and derivatives activities, regardless of whether these services are provided via brick-and-mortar facilities or fully electronic platforms.
Mr. Ong noted that a review is underway concerning the practice of quarterly reporting for listed companies. Whether the practice will be abolished or liberalized has yet to be determined. The Singapore Exchange has submitted its proposal on the matter to MAS for consideration.
And for more, we're joined in studio by David Gerald, founder, president and CEO of Securities Investors Association, and Carmine Di Noia, deputy chairman of Corporate Governance Committee at the OECD. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
David, I'll come to you first, and if you can help us sort of set the scene or give us the sort of context of the state of play that we have here for corporate governance here in Singapore.
Well, corporate governance in Singapore over the last decade has improved tremendously. As you know, both the regulatory level and industry level, we have taken many initiatives, and in Asia and Asia Pacific region, Singapore has been top 3 always. We pipped Hong Kong, but having said that, we continue to monitor corporate governance practices, and from the ground, the investors, a body like SIAS, is questioning companies, seeking accountability, working with the boards, and at the regulatory level, I mean, SGX listing rules are strictly applied. And I think our corporate leaders are very responsible, and it's impossible not to have infractions or failures. There will be always in ethics. No amount of measures can prevent failures. But in Singapore, we are fortunate that there aren't many.
Right, but you know, the authorities there are also reviewing whether to do away with the quarterly reporting, but these are just for small companies, right?
Yes.
If that actually does materialize, how do you think corporate governance will be affected for them?
Okay, then the efforts from the floor, from the ground, shareholders will have to step up, asking more questions. SIAS is now posing 3 questions on governance, business practices, and financial statements, and encourage them to be more active at AGMs. That's one. Secondly, boards must know that money follows good governance. Capital will not come to you if your governance is, not up to scratch. So they will have to pull up their socks and do more.
Carmine, when we talk about corporate governance in sort of the digital age, now that the pace of technology is moving so quickly, how can corporate governance, or what are the challenges that corporate governance has to sort of keep pace with that?
Yeah, yesterday we had a magnificent Formula 1 race here in Singapore. Actually, Ferrari won first and second. And, to keep pace with it is like people think that they are okay, that you buy a brand new car and then it's perfect, then a Ferrari can overcome you immediately. Now, with corporate governance and technology, companies really need to understand that they must be always and always updated, because actually the effect of digital ledger technology, artificial intelligence, are really very, massive in the real life of company and every day, from, placing securities in the primary market, from, board functioning, from AGM organization, as David was saying. So it's very, very important. At the same time, you need to understand, and this is important for companies. Actually, we're working a lot at the OECD. I'm here as OECD Deputy Chair of the Corporate Governance Committee. We are working a lot on all jurisdictions, including Asia, to really convince companies that corporate governance is not an end in itself. You really got to believe that it's very, very important to have effective functioning board members that are truly independent and competent. And competence is a true independence that you need to have. So really you must believe that it's right what you're doing, and in this way investors will invest in you.
Right, but at the same time, in the context of digital transformation, data-driven decision-making processes, that doesn't actually sound like they fit together with people and accountability. So are they really mutually exclusive?
It's very interesting this. We are talking about, and today we discuss about, artificial intelligence, and Professor Muir said it's an augmented intelligence. I think that really is not, they're complementary, not alternatives. We're not going to arrive to a point where we have, robot instead of, board members, but we really need to think that artificial intelligence, DLT, they are, we always say one size does not fit all for corporate governance, but actually all IT is fit probably for many, many companies in a proportional way. So not substitution, but complementarity.
Okay, well, despite sort of increased attention given to corporate governance, there will always be, and you mentioned it just now, that there will always be things that slip through the cracks, perhaps.
There will always be.
Where do you see the sort of the weak points?
The weak points are largely in internal controls, like China Aviation, which happened long ago, but since then there have been instances where risk management, if the risk management is poor and internal controls is not up to scratch, then you'll find someone slipping through the net. It will happen. So both the shareholders, firstly, to begin with, the board must look into internal controls and have internal audit function. That's very important. Effective internal audit function, besides external audit function, then internal controls. All right? That must be all the time reviewed.
Carmine, so where does Singapore actually rank in corporate governance among countries that you've worked with? What are we doing right, or what are we doing wrong?
Oh, I think Singapore is ranking very well, also thanks to the participation to the OECD and G20 work on this. And honestly, you are very similar in a sense to Italian, because you have many, family-controlled companies, but also big, big one privatized. Now, I think we talk about, technology, how it can help, but I think let's go back to basics. So some things must be improved here, but also in other countries. The centrality of the board. You need board members to approve important operations, hot operations like related party transaction, and when you have, concentrated ownership, it may become, quite easy to have them. But also, basics, operations of AGM. For example, here, you don't have a compulsory publication of all AGM minutes after, without any, with all the information. So you got to know, in some countries like us, that how every shareholder who was there and how every shareholder, including the retail one, voted, including institutional investors. So back to basic disclosure. That's very important. Disclosure of ownership asset. Who really is owning your share? Who is attending a meeting? Disclosure on compensation. Not only the compensation of board members get from the company, but also from the controlled company, and not only compensation getting from as being board member, but also from other kind of money you may receive, legally, advisory, other functions. So it's important to have transparency. Transparency pays. It's better to have it.
Right. Thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us, gentlemen. We've been speaking with Founder, President, and CEO of SIAS, David Gerald, and Carmine Di Noia, Deputy Chairman of Corporate Governance Committee, OECD.